hit the like and subscribe button right now or else I will know what you did last summer. Ask/Reddit by Reddit Habbits. Doctors of Reddit, what's the biggest case of faking it you've ever seen? Had a patient come in for a fall who now couldn't move their legs at all. Did a bunch of tests, didn't find anything. The patient was not at all fazed by suddenly being paralyzed, which was the first red flag. Didn't really believe anything was wrong, but the patient was still not moving their legs. My options are to admit for a huge workup or get them to walk. So I update them saying everything is fine, tests are negative, you can go home. Patient gets up, gets dressed and walks out without a word. So I update them saying everything is fine, tests are negative, you can go home. Patient gets up, gets dressed and walks out without a word. Jesus doesn't miss leg fixing day. Young, 18 to 20, woman went running into small rural hospital pretending to have abdominal pain. Police officer had tagged her going 40+ km over the limit, which was "stunt driving" as per the new law in Ontario. Impounded license suspension automatic. Cop followed her into a and apparently said he'd be waiting for her when she left. Locum staff such as myself were housed at a small B&B about 15 minutes away, and the had pre-printed order sets to be done before we arrived. When I arrived, she flat out admitted that she just came in because she freaked out and didn't stop. I told her we'd give her 45 minutes to call her parents/family before I booted her, except BHCG came back positive and subsequent ultrasound came back showing extremely early ectopic. Officer figures out something is up when he hears air ambulance call coming over radio. She was completely asymptomatic and just worked out that she dodged both charges and a life-threatening issue by accident. It was definitely a WTF moment. Edit. Well, this blew up overnight. I got a few messages. A little more info. Small rural hospitals in northern Ontario often service areas from more than an hour's drive away and still only have a catchment area of 2,000 to 3,000 people. When on call it was just that. We would do our days in the community clinic, then maybe hospital rounds, then go home and be on call. We wouldn't be at the hospital. There wasn't an on-call room where you would stay, for example. There were lots of times that you'd go a full night without being woken up, or maybe just a call from the acute care inpatient wing. Locums were short-term contracts for places that didn't have full-time medical staff for whatever reason. It's hard to attract clinicians if you don't even have broadband internet in the community. They generally pay very well. Reminds me of an old post where some hobo came to the hospital speaking incoherently, and they decided to give him a checkup anyway to show to the students. It was a university hospital, and he turned up to have some issue with the liver. After they treated him, he became lucid and turns out he was a professor on his way to a lecture when his liver stopped functioning properly and he couldn't think clearly because of that. So he was just wandering the streets for a while. To be fair, most history profs I've had could be mistaken for a homeless man if they just forgot to comb their hair in the morning. Ectopic pregnancies are nuts. My mom almost died from one before my time. Her only symptom for weeks was horrible shoulder pain. Physical therapist here. Working mom comes into the clinic with her infant in a stroller. She's limping like she's got a nail in her foot. Wincing in pain and tears in her eyes. She's crying during her visit with the PT. None of us think she's faking it. She limped out of the clinic. I glanced out of the window and saw this woman bounding down the sidewalk. Hips swaying, full stride, going places. We were all fools. To what end? Did she fake an injury? Sympathy? You guys don't prescribe, right? No, but my money would be on trying for some 7-figure lawsuit payout, which involves playing the Luan game. Amateurs. For a 7-figure lawsuit, you even limp in the shower. My brother was an EMT for 2 years, and he told me this. People will try to use the ambulance as a means for transportation from Fulton to Oswego because the hospital is in Oswego by faking seizures. Sometimes when the head EMT guy was feeling fun and knew that the person was faking, he'd say something like, "Man, it's weird that he's having seizures, but not peeing himself." Apparently the person would kind of snap out of it for a second, weigh up the repercussions, then either pee themselves or stop faking. I thought that was hilarious. We had a family calling for a Medicap, a cab paid for by income-based insurance, from somewhere out in the sticks to our area in a college town. Every few weeks or so, the mom would be seen for some ailment or the other, and the rest of the family would go to Walmart, go to the mall, do all their in-town errands. She was basically faking an emergency illness every few weeks, so they wouldn't have to pay for a cab to get their shopping done. Had a patient when I was an intern feigning blindness. She would constantly be playing on her smartphone, only furiously trying to hide it when someone from the care team came into her room. The best was when my attending one day strolled past her room and threw his hand up in a highly exaggerated hello wave. She started to throw her arm up too, but caught herself halfway through, then threw her hand back into her lap and pretended to be staring off into nothing. I would never have expected pretending to be blind to be such a commonly faked issue, but reading this thread has changed my mind on that. I didn't know it was common either. We have a guest at my workplace who is either pretending to be blind or exaggerates her vision loss a good deal. She once yelled out to me specifically across a room. I was standing near 3 other employees of similar height and build, all wearing the same uniform. Everyone has a story about her. Ophthalmology technician. People pretend to be blind all the time. Go to check their eye pressure with the tonopin, a device you poke them directly into the eye with, and they go, "What the FCK is that thing?" When I worked family practice admin, the clinic I was working in was in the country and had been passed along through various doctors over the years, starting from about 1960. Holy God, the old tonometer they had looked like something from the Middle Ages, and the general opinion of the clinic was that it doesn't get used anymore. It was like a museum. The previous doc never got rid of anything, so you had drawers filled with metal anoscopes and things. Lol, we still use the Shiards sometimes. It is an accurate, precision German-made instrument that requires no electricity, as the patient lays on their back, and it's placed directly on the eye for 5 minutes. My cousin got glasses. Her 7-year-old little sister also wanted glasses because she thought it was so cool to wear them. So she started telling her teachers she couldn't read what was on the chalkboard, and she'd squint at home and go incredibly close to the TV to watch things because she said she couldn't see things clearly. Her parents got worried and took her to the doctor. She read everything wrong on the vision test. Everyone seemed convinced that she needed glasses, but the doctor was a little concerned because the tests indicated she needed really thick glasses, and usually that wasn't the case unless there was a family history of vision issues. Her parents both had 20/20 vision and her sister only had astigmatism. They all realized she was faking it, so the doctor told her parents in front of her that she'd need some pretty intense eye surgery so she'd be able to see without glasses. They even wheeled in a machine to make it convincing to say they could do the surgery right then and there. She freaked out, confessed to faking it all, and started to cry. She got grounded for a while. I wanted glasses as a small child too. Went to the ophthalmologist, purposely misread all the charts. The doctor pulled a pair of glasses out from a drawer. I put them on, read all the lines perfectly. Turns out they were fake glasses for just this situation. Frames with glass, not prescription lens. Luckily my parents didn't punish me, just stressed how important it is not to lie and let me learn my lesson from being embarrassed at being caught in the lie. When I was a kid I learned I could fake sick and get out of school. So 1 to 2 days a week I would get a migraine and hold my head and complain, and I would get to go home. Eventually my parents took me to a neurologist who said maybe you just don't let him eat chocolate and sugar. I admitted to faking and was grounded for a long time. I grew up the opposite way. I would get 3 to 4 migraines a week, but everyone thought I was faking it because most days I seemed fine, just because I was learning how to deal with them and try to act normal. It wasn't until 8 years after they started that I went to a neurologist who said I have chronic migraines, which I dealt with unmedicated for 16 years. Now I'm on medication. I feel like my childhood was wasted. Edit. I've replied to a lot of you nice people, but I'm on mobile, and it will only load like 200 replies and I can't view any more to reply on, but I like reading your responses. Much love to you all. When I was a kid, I would plan my sick days way ahead of time. Had an old thermos that I would pour leftover milk, meat, whatever, leave it on the windowsill in my bedroom, just letting it fester for a month. Of course the thermos was closed so no smells escaped. I set an alarm for the middle of the night, dumped the contents of the thermos on my rug, and ran in to tell my dad I was throwing up and so sick. However, this thermos monstrosity filled the entire condo up with horrible smells, and both me and my dad ended up puking into the tub at the same time every time we tried to clean up the rug. He had to take the day off work too. Needless to say, I never pulled that again. I was worried you were going to drink it in order to make yourself sick. Thank goodness that is not what happened. I'm not that big of monster. Just a normal gremlin. My mom's a nurse, and she said once some crazy lady came in and complained that she had the whooping cough, and whenever she coughed she followed it with a loud whoop. She's doing it wrong. That's a coughing whoop. Exactly. The right way is to whoop before you cough. Whoop core. Yes, the whoop and cough. 30Y/a woman came to the ED with such excruciating belly pain. Paralyzed. Oh god, it hurts. When you press there. Must have oxycodone now. A doc said if she can get out of the ED bed and do 20 jumping jacks, we can give her the oxy. She did 20 jumping jacks, then got kicked out of the edition. Sounds like the woman who came into my dentist's office while I was working reception, sobbing frantically and saying she'd broken a tooth and was in agony. Wouldn't let the dentist examine the tooth, just demanded that she needed something for the pain. She got kicked out pretty fast once the dentist managed to get a look and said it was broken, but it was an old break and didn't even come close to the nerve. And here I'm with a broken molar, not wanting to go to the dentist because it doesn't hurt too bad. Do it. I had a toothache and blew it off till I could barely stand from the pain. It was the day before Thanksgiving, and by the time I decided, okay, I should see a dentist, it was too late and everyone had left. Luckily an urgent care place had a dentist on call. Turns out my filling fell out and the tooth got infected and I had to get a root canal. Root canals are expensive, I will tell you that, and that's not including the crown I'm now waiting on. Doctors should get a side gig as a personal trainer. Haha, just some personal trainer tempting all their clients with drugs and then taking it away at the last second. Edit. Litter. No painkillers, no gain. Not a doctor, but a nurse once had a patient having a seizure. The other nurse and I knew she was faking it. He said as much. She suddenly stopped seizing, miraculously, looked straight at him, and yelled, "Shut up, fat boy." He and I laughed so hard. The other nurse was referred to as such, fat boy, for a few months after that. At least she wasn't having a seizure. Edit. Spelling and clarification. My wife works in a hospital, radiographer, and some of the nurses have told stories of those who fake being unconscious. Apparently a couple of surefire ways to check this are knuckling the sternum or knocking on a clavicle without warning. Then there was the amusing story she heard where a nurse said out loud, "You know that even while unconscious, a person will reflexively not let their hand hit their face," and proceeded to lift the patient's arm and drop it over their face, to which the unconscious person stopped their hand in midair. Yup. I read a post along these lines by an EMT who just asks their partner to pass the ocular needle. Occasionally the partner has to ask, "The ocular needle? That goes in the eye." The patient always wakes up suddenly. Posted this before, but male patient, 18 years old, rolled in unconscious. Mom says he's been like that for the past 4 hours. Go to check his lungs. When I hear something interesting, I place the stethoscope near his mouth and hear him breathe in normally, but then breathe out by saying breathe. No joke. Male patient, 21 years old, admitted with inability to speak for last 2 hours and respiratory distress. Lungs clear, but we hook him up to oxygen for a few minutes. After he's taken off, his father comes running and drags me over, saying his son's tongue refuses to go back in after receiving the oxygen. I look at the kid and he's seriously just lying there with his tongue poking out like a child. I tell them to push it back in. A few hours later the dad tells me the boy is convulsing. I go to see without making my presence known, and he's lying there just fine. The moment I ask the mom how he's doing, he starts convulsing. Think of an odd version of the worm, but on his back. Female patient, 16 years old, admitted with complaints of recurrent seizures and frothing from the mouth. I look at her and she is literally blowing spit bubbles. I check her reflexes. Everything is intact. The moment I turn away to check on another patient, she suddenly becomes rigid and the spitting intensifies. Male patient, 30 years old, unconscious and completely unresponsive for 6 hours. This guy was totally dedicated to his act. I initially approached it as a stroke, but when the blood pressure, ECG, reflexes, pupils, etc. all are normal, I start checking pain sensation. He slowly began to open his eyes and groan as I asked him to tell me his name, but the moment his Achilles tendon was pressed, he suddenly sat up, stated his name, and declared himself cured. Female patient, 17 years old, complained of respiratory distress and convulsions. Everything's normal on admission, and she's conscious, but refuses to eat. Parents are worried out of their minds, and every few minutes she has a fit, where she would just basically shake from side to side. She let slip to a nurse that she didn't want to go to school that week, so she was faking an illness. Since she was refusing to eat, the attending wrote up an order for an nasogastric tube, which was inserted and then removed by her in a matter of minutes. Thank you so much for watching till the end. Don't forget to like and subscribe to keep up with our daily videos.